what is your favorite movie and why?
I don't want to be so cliche with the.
I mean, you can say Top Gun. It's fine.
Oh, no, it's good. I'm gonna go with the same theme for both the movies, and I'm gonna go totally off the topic, right? And so, favorite movie is The Sandlot.
Amazing movie.
And what I'm most looking forward to, as I told you when we were walking in, my 7-year-old just made the All-Star team, which, by the way, it's crazy. Sports in Texas are crazy. The fact that we have a 7-year-old All-Star team is nuts.
Right.
I'm looking forward to, on the weekends, going out and helping coach that team.
So, funny correlation. Chris, who's my audio guy, his older brother, Robert, was my best friend growing up, and our paths diverged in junior high because I continued to go to public school. He went to private school. He went to school all 4 years with Mike Vitar, who was the main character, who's the amazing baseball player who ends up making it to the Dodgers. Yeah. So
Benny the Jet Rodriguez.
I will tell you once we stop the mic a few stories about Mike Vitar. Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. All right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's Scott Groves with the On the Edge podcast. We're here with my new friend, Tim Herman, who's got the wildest story. Somehow decided to go from flying fighter jets in the Navy, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, like straight out of Top Gun, all the way to doing mortgages and finance and opening a finance company called UpEquity, which we're going to get into like the problem that they solve. Here, lay your cigar, man. Well, we gotta smoke these things if we're going to have it. And for those following along at home, I pretty much am only smoking the Padron 1926 now. It's just like the best cigar out there. So if you're a smoker, Padron 1926, get it. All right, cool. So yeah, I met Tim Herman at our Synergy event down in San Diego, and he came to give a whole talk on the company UpEquity and the problem they're solving and how they're helping homeowners really solve this problem of an aggressive market where nobody will accept an offer if it's contingent on the sale of their current property. So we'll get into what all that looks like. But like, I want to hear the background first, because when I meet people that did cool stuff in the military, whether it's fly, fighter jets or do the whole special forces thing or the stuff that I feel is like high speed in the military, I always think about like, well, if you were doing that kind of cool stuff, why wouldn't you just stay in for the 20 years and retire? So first of all, like, tell us about your journey of being a fighter pilot and then why you decided to leave that journey and try something else.
Sure. So, I mean, number one, I am incredibly proud of the time that I spent on active duty, and I was incredibly fortunate to serve. That's one of the defining experiences of my life. And I always think of myself as a fighter pilot. Right?
Nice.
And it starts when I was a little kid, right? Is my dad, before he unfortunately passed away when I was young, I was 10 when my dad passed away. Oh. But he was a skydiver, right? So I grew up going out and watching my dad jump out of airplanes from the time that I could remember. I have no memories before being at a drop zone and watching my dad jump out of airplanes. And I remember back when TVs were super expensive, right? My parents thought that the coolest thing in the world was they bought this big screen TV, and this is like 1990. So it's not the flat screen, it's the big huge thing. And
the huge box, right?
The huge box, right?
Yeah.
And my dad used to have all of the friends come over and show it off, right? And the way that he would show it off is he would put Top Gun, the original movie, on and go to one of those, the scene with the dog fighting and the big surround sound. And so some of my earliest memories are watching guys jump out of airplanes, watching Top Gun. And from an early age, I knew I wanted to do that. I knew that I wanted to go push myself to the extreme. I didn't want to be an Air Force fighter pilot, right? Anyone can land on a runway. It takes a real fighter pilot to land on a boat. But I had older brothers, right? And my older brothers went to college and they drank beer and chased women, and I was like, man, that looks like they're having a good time, mate. I don't know if I can do this fighter pilot thing. But I got invited to the Naval Academy to basically a summer program when I was a junior in high school. And I looked at the kind of men and women that graduated from there. It was men and women of character. I looked at the experience and I thought I can meet this challenge. And I looked at the opportunity of getting an Ivy League education for free on the taxpayer, right? And so I decided, I'm going to try this. I'm going to see if I can meet this challenge. And so I went to the Naval Academy for undergrad and worked really hard to make sure that I didn't want to, I have a lot of friends that wound up driving ships and they enjoyed it, and it just wasn't for me. right? I went there to fly jets.
There's a lot of kids that see a movie when they're 5 years old. So Chris's older brother, Robert DeRosa, oh, you got to flip the top there. Chris's older brother, Robert DeRosa, when we were little kids, he probably saw a fireman movie, Backdraft or something like that. He's like, I'm going to be a fireman. And, every kid has that thing. I'm going to be a fireman. I'm going to be a cop. I'm going to be a whatever. Very few people follow through. Life gets in the way. We grow up. I realize I don't want to carry people out of a burning building, or like, I always thought I was going to be a lawyer because I loved arguing. Then I realized like, oh shit, lawyers have to go to school for like 8 years.
Yeah, it's a lot of reading.
Yeah, hard pass on that. So it's like, what was it about you or about the desire to be a fighter pilot where it's like you're a little kid, you said, oh, I'm going to do this. And then you do it because like you said, even going through the Naval Academy doesn't guarantee that you're going to be a pilot. I mean, you have to be in the upper echelon of the graduating class just to be invited. So what?
Well, and then by the way, once you go to flight school, you have to, everything that you do is graded from the very first day you step into ground school through the 10 years that I was flying. Everything that I did was graded. Every landing on the boat is graded. And so to get to fly what you want to fly, you actually have to perform to a certain standard as well.
Yeah. I've got a buddy he was in the Marines and, super brilliant guy, amazing family, love the guy to death. He's actually my best friend's brother-in-law. And when it came to the interview, and like my brother-in-law will never forgive him for this because we grew up huge fans of Top Gun. When it came to the interview and they're like, hey man, you're in like the top of the top of the top. You could fly fighter planes for the Marines. He was like, yeah, that'd be cool. And he wasn't like so fired up and like, yeah, that's my lifelong dream. They're like, okay, cool. You're going to fly the Osprey. And he's made a great military career teaching people how to fly the Osprey. But those things crash all the time and they're miserable and the like hydraulics don't work. So he's like, man, maybe I should have shown a little bit more excitement around like, I don't know, flying fighter jets or whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, there's an important mission. Everybody out there that's flying or that is serving is doing great work. And so, I like to give my buddies a hard time about, what's better, Navy, Air Force, whatever. But
right.
I respect everybody out there doing the good work of defending our country.
Is the F-18 or the F-35 that you flew, is that a dual cockpit or a single cockpit?
So the F-35 is only single seat cockpit. The F-18 has two versions. It has a single and a dual seat. I always flew single seat.
Okay, so for you to be a single guy up there doing like the cool shit that happens on the movies, I always wonder if you had to take a guess, how many support people are in the military behind the scene, fueling it, mechanics, air traffic controllers, to get that one pilot in the sky? Because I think I read something during Desert Storm that for like every hour of flight that an Apache helicopter was in the air supporting troops and doing the cool shit and shooting stuff and doing flybys, there was something like 400 hours of like behind the scenes maintenance and weapons and stuff. So how many people do you presume in the Navy were supporting that one guy that goes up in the plane?
Yeah, so when you're talking about an Apache, you're talking about land-based, right?
Right.
And the 400 hours is just for getting the flight hour.
Yeah.
So when I'm flying or when my buddies are out there right now flying off the front edge of the aircraft carrier, you got 5,000 people on the ship. You've got the whole battle strike group, right? You've got all of the support, the logistical support to make sure that there's food and there's fuel and there's everything for the carrier, but also for the rest of the battle group, the submarines, the cruisers, the destroyers. So, I mean, thousands of people in order for us to launch in that single seat jet and make sure that we're ready to do our job.
Yeah, because for the most part, those cruisers and supply ships only exist to support the battleship. The battleship only exists to support the aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier's sole mission is to get your plane off the deck to go on longer range missions. It's like that whole, the funny thing is the whole entirety of the Navy in its modern form is almost set up just to support the launching of aircraft.
I mean, that's what a fighter pilot would say. The SLOs and the sub guys would have some, and the SEALs, they all would beg to differ.
Right. All right. So I want to go back when you're thinking about becoming a fighter pilot. Like, what does that journey look like? Like, what do you have to do in high school to be, recommended to go to the Naval Academy? And then the Naval Academy, how do you have to perform to get to flight school? And then at flight school, how do you have to perform to get to, because I got to imagine the weeding out process from about 9th or 10th grade, making sure you don't get in trouble for smoking pot or something, all the way up to your very last evaluation of like, oh, are we actually going to put you in this $50 million piece of equipment by yourself? What does that journey look like? And how the fuck are you qualified to do that at like 24?
Yeah, you're probably not. And certainly I can tell you some stories. And I'm sure we're going to spend some time smoking this cigar, and I can give you the stories about all the times I did get in trouble for smoking pot.
Perfect.
And how I got lucky that the Navy didn't find out about that.
Perfect.
So let's just go back. You don't have to go to an academy to fly jets, but you do have to be an officer, right? To be an officer, you have to get a 4-year college diploma. And so you have to either go through an academy, go through ROTC, or go to a 4-year college and then go to OCS. And so what I did was I went to the academy. Again, I want to challenge myself to do the hardest thing out there and see if I can do it. And to me, that path was to go through the academy. And I actually didn't get in my first tryout of high school. So that's where the stories about getting in trouble for smoking pot come in.
Okay.
I actually got put on the wait list and denied when I was a senior in high school. So I went to UC Santa Barbara, which is about the furthest extreme opposite of the United States Naval Academy.
Yes.
And so I spent a year there and had a lot of fun, but I reapplied to the Naval Academy before I had too much fun.
Right.
And luckily I got in and didn't become too much of a problem that year at Santa Barbara.
So a buddy of mine, and I'm not going to use his last name because he's still active in Army Special Forces. My buddy Kenny, same thing, man. Talk about polar opposites. He applied for West Point for the Army Academy. He gets in, and then like 2 weeks before he's supposed to leave for West Point, he's playing pickup basketball and blows up his Achilles right before he's supposed to report to, like, I think they do like a 3-week physical fitness before your freshman year or something. So he obviously can't go to West Point. His backup where he got accepted was Berkeley. So we went to Berkeley for a year, like just the haven of the most liberal ideas you can possibly come up with in America. Like they're not even liberal; they're like far left, progressive,
far leftist.
And then he goes to the military academy to West Point, and I'm like, man, what a juxtaposition of like female Chicano empowerment studies and blah 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 to like, oh, now you're going to memorize military history. And he says it served him really well. Like,
I think the same thing is one of the hardest things. Again, your question was, how are you qualified to do any of this at 24? Is just having the maturity, right? And It's really hard when you're 18, 19, 20 and all your buddies are out, like I said, drinking beer and chasing women. And you're sitting there at either Annapolis or West Point doing push-ups and getting yelled at, right?
Yeah.
And so at least having had that experience was really helpful for me to be a little bit more mature about what the obligation was.
So are there any movies, because I know there's maybe a half dozen movies about people's time at Annapolis and there's a bunch about West Point. Are there any movies that get it right? Like what the military academy experience is like? Have you seen any where you're like, oh yeah, that really resonates with me? Or is it all just super Hollywood dramatization?
Yeah, so academy-wise, I haven't seen anything.
Okay.
I will say that the new Top Gun movie was really good. And I'm
Really?
obviously very biased and partial, but
Right.
the flying was good. Most of the culture was pretty right. Like, what's funny is there's a scene where Tom Cruise puts his cell phone on the bar, and he ends up having to buy the whole round or the whole bar a round of drinks.
Yeah.
Right? That's a real rule. And so we actually named my younger son after my commanding officer in the Navy. And last summer, we went out to Top Gun, which is in Fallon, right? It's like right outside of Reno, and because he was retiring from the Navy. And so my 7-year-old, my 3-year-old, my wife and I are out on the flight line for his last flight. We go back to the bar, and my 7-year-old puts he had an iPad with him to take pictures. He puts his iPad on the bar, and the captain's going to ring the bell on me, and I have to buy a round of drinks for the whole bar. It's a real story. I mean, it's a real rule.
It's a real thing. So what does Annapolis look like? I mean, are you living there year round for 4 years? Do you get a break? Do you know that you're kind of jockeying for like a flight school position, or what is it? What does it look like?
It's kind of like normal college, except for you from the class perspective, and then you add military training, physical training, and then summer training. And so where a normal student would have, 3 months off during the summer, you probably get 4 weeks off, and you spend most of your summer either out with a squadron or on a ship, or you get some pretty cool training opportunities. One of the things that I got to do, which was a non-standard opportunity, was I did. Have you ever heard of National Outdoor Leadership School?
No.
So it's kind of like Outward Bound, but except for not for troubled kids. It's just an opportunity to hone your leadership skills in the wilderness.
Okay.
So I did a month-long sea kayaking trip in Alaska, in Prince William Sound. We kayaked 200 miles as just like 14, 20-year-olds off on their own for a month. It was a pretty cool experience.
That's wild, man. And I got to imagine everything the Navy is doing at that level, they're indoctrinating you to the systems and the procedures and the cultures, or they got to build leaders. It's always been weird to me, having served in the Army, that it's like, in my infantry platoon, there was guys from 18 to about 38. So you get some guys that have 20 years of experience. They're an E7 sergeant, ton of respect for them, right? At the time that I served, pre 9/11, some of them had been to Panama and Grenada, and a couple of them had been to Bosnia or whatever. So some like wartime experience. And then you get the 22-year-old that comes out of West Point, who's like a butter bar, and he's supposed to lead these people and be the leader. Like the officer, non-commissioned officer thing, it's really weird in the Army. Is it a little weird in the Navy, or do officers in the Navy just have more technical skills where, like, obviously you can't take a mechanic and teach him to fly a plane, or in the moment you can't have him fly in the plane, but I guess maybe you could like turn a wrench or something. Like how does that dynamic between like officers and enlisted guys in the Navy play out?
So I think that dynamic is universal across the services, but I think that I can only talk about my very idiosyncratic experience, which is being a fighter pilot, right? Mm-hmm. And so there is a bond of trust between me as a pilot and the enlisted crew that are working on the jet, which is my life is literally in their hands, right? It's the guys that are turning the wrenches to make sure that the jet works, or the guys that are working on the ejection seat. Like, I have to trust them to do their job with a level of competence that I'm willing to put my life on the line for. So I think that it's a little bit different there. It's also a little bit different. Sounds like you were in an infantry platoon.
Yeah.
Those officers and NCOs are out there on the front line with you. Whereas for us, we're on deployment together, but when we launch off the end of the ship, it's, the guys in the jet. And that's not to take anything away from anybody. I'm just saying that for us, the dynamic is a little bit different.
Yeah. Probably
a little bit more collegial, but still everybody knows NCOs run the military, right? And you get taught that at the academy, that you're going to have a bad time if you show up to your squadron or to your ship and try to tell a chief that's been there for 20 years what to do, right?
Right.
Chiefs from the Navy.
Because you can't have any like B+ F-18 mechanics, right? That thing's going so fast, and the tolerance of error has to be so small. Like you can't just have a bad day on that plane, right?
Well, you can have a bad day. It just turns into a very bad day.
Yeah. I mean, for real, turns into death if something goes wrong.
That's right.
Oh, man. What is that like, training in an environment where, like the upper echelon, and I was just a regular grunt. I didn't go to Ranger School or Delta Force or Green Berets or any of that shit, but I have a lot of friends that have. And there's some margin of error when you're hiking or in a Humvee or you're shooting. Like it's just not precision like it is in an aircraft. And even they've been criticized of like, man, you guys train so hard that there's like some deaths in training, right? And then if you talk to guys that have actually been through it, it's like, that's just part of what we sign up for. But I have to imagine, like, every time you go up in a plane going that fast, there's a little bit of like in the back of your mind, like, or is it in the back of your mind that like, oh, this could be my last run? I mean.
No, so unfortunately what happens is at some interval, jet will go down and somebody that you're really close with will die in training, and it crystallizes kind of the risk that you're taking. And you go to the bar that night and you drink with the squadron and you tell stories about the guy that didn't come back, and then you have to get back in the jet the next day. And, sometimes you take 24 hours off, but it just is part of the job, and you have to be able to compartmentalize. And if you can't compartmentalize and you can't go out there and perform, then you're in the wrong profession.
Yeah. The totality of my knowledge about what you just said comes from the opening scene of the first Top Gun, where the guy like turns in his wings and he's like sweating. He's like, I just don't got it anymore. Like, I was seeing my family. I was scared. And I was like, I remember even as a little kid watching that and be like, oh yeah, how could you have a family and be a fighter pilot? It still blows my mind when people have like families and they, they're Navy SEALs or something, or just, standard infantry guys, and they deploy to a scene where it's like, for sure you're going to get shot at by somebody who's trying to kill you. And you've got like little Johnny and little Susie back home. That just like, that blows my mind. Yeah.
But I mean, I think that it also crystallizes why we do what we do, right? We want to protect little Johnny. For me, it's Steven and JT and my wife, Erica, you do get to a point where, hey, maybe the deployment cycles wear on you. You want to spend more time with them. I'm enjoying coaching Little League, right?
Right.
You can't do that when you're on deployment, but it gives you the reason for doing what you do.
I love that. So tell us a little bit more about like getting through the Naval Academy and then flight school. And then I want to hear all about equity and, how you get involved in that and why you decided to transfer to finance of all things. So just round out the end of the experience in learning to fly.
Yeah. So let me just start with, I knew when I went to the Naval Academy that this was going to be the great adventure of my youth. I wanted to fly, but I didn't want to make it a career. I didn't want to do 20. I knew that when I was 18. And I talked about kind of some of the experience or the influences that my father had on me. The other huge influence on my life was my grandfather, and he was a very successful investment banker. And we grew up in Silicon Valley, and so I could see what entrepreneurship could do and what finance could do. And just I'm unabashedly a capitalist, and I'm unabashedly financially motivated. And so I knew that I wanted to serve, and I wanted to have the opportunity to serve, but that I wanted to have the opportunity also to create wealth for myself and for my family, and that there wasn't a path to doing that on active duty.
Right. So this probably gets like super, super Freudian or deep or stuff that I'm not qualified to talk about, but is it like doing the Air Force thing in that
Navy,
the Navy, flying a plane in the Navy? It sounds like, inspirationally or in honor of them, like that's kind of honoring what you wanted to do, I don't know, maybe for your dad. And now this finance piece is like inspiration from your grandfather.
Yeah, I'd have to, maybe I'll come back and we'll drink some whiskey and we'll get deep into that.
Right.
I think of it more as I am constantly pushed to challenge myself to see how good I am. And there's no way to know how good you are at something other than going out and finding the top level to compete against. And I find myself constantly searching for kind of that dopamine or those endorphins that you get from competition. It's funny. I said I'm coaching my 7-year-old play baseball, and I hear him talk about butterflies before the game. And I think that I've just been searching for that feeling over and over and over again since I was playing youth sports.
Yeah. And how long did you do on active duty in the Navy after, or what does it look like training? So you do your 4 years in the Naval Academy, and then what does your next 10 years look like?
Yeah, so 4 years at the Naval Academy. Then it takes about 2 years to get your wings. And then from the time you get your wings, you owe 8 years of service. So I was on some sort of active duty for 14 years. 10 of them count towards retirement. So I was halfway there when I got out.
It's so crazy to me that they can take a young 22-year-old. I don't care, even if you're the most mature 22-year-old, and they're like, in 24 months, we're going to have you flying 600 miles an hour. Like, how fast do those planes go?
Yeah, it's like faster than the speed of sound.
How fast is that?
Well, that depends. But yeah, let's call it 600 miles an hour.
Holy shit, dude. Like, it's just bonkers to me. Like, I remember one time, and this is like probably a couple $1,000 round. I remember one time hanging a mortar round, and I'm just looking around. I'm like, I'm 19. Why the fuck do they trust me with this thing? Like, this thing could take out our whole squad if I drop it the wrong way. And it's like, yeah. And then they give I got like 4 months of training. Like, why do I have this thing in my hand?
Yeah. And then they give us 500-pound bombs, put it on a $100 million jet, launch off the end of the aircraft carrier, and fly over a bunch of people.
Hey, this quick interruption is brought to you by me, Scott Groves, the host of the On the Edge podcast. This podcast is brought to you by me. I'm a loan officer who can help you with a mortgage in all 50 states across the United States. I also coach loan officers. So if you are a home buyer who's looking to get a mortgage, if you're a realtor who's looking to partner with an awesome loan officer, or if you're a loan officer looking for coaching, get in touch with me. It's those sources of revenue that allow us to produce this podcast and get out a new episode to you every week for the last couple of years. So if you're looking for a mortgage, if you're looking for a mortgage lender to partner with, or you're looking for a mortgage coach, I'm your guy. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Oh my goodness. So what years were you, after you got your wings, like what years were you active and like deployed on a ship?
So I was active and in the fleet from around, I guess that would be 2010 to 2018.
Okay. So can you talk about like where you were or what conflicts we were involved in at the time, or is that kind of some top secret?
Yeah,
shit?
it's not top secret or anything like that. The deployment that I did was Far East deployment. Not anything particularly interesting about it.
Okay.
I was doing the same stuff that everybody else out there is doing.
Yeah, you say that so nonchalantly, but not really. Because when you go out, like you said, there's the aircraft carrier and there's probably a battleship and some cruisers and whatnot. And at any given time, is it public knowledge, like how many of those groups we have out in the waters of the earth, just like patrolling shit?
Yeah, every now and then something happens in the news and you'll see, hey, we're sending 2 carrier battle groups to,
the coast of Taiwan or something like this.
Yeah, usually it's Israel or Taiwan.
Yeah.
That we're sending places.
So there are they like, was your battle group just like hanging out in San Diego? Like you had nights off the boat, or is it like, no, you're on the boat in the middle of the ocean for 6 months, 10 months?
Yeah, so kind of the way that it works when you're in a fleet squadron is you spend 3 years in that fleet squadron. A lot of the time is spent, I wish it was San Diego.
Right.
Post tailhook, the Navy gave up San Diego and the Marines took it for the jets. So the West Coast Hornet squadrons are all in Lemoore, California, which is
not nearly as nice as San Diego. I've driven through Lemoore. There's a lot of cow shit.
Yeah. So if you're driving down the 5 and it just smells like cow shit, that you're at the exit for Lemoore.
Yeah, you hang a right and like go out into the middle. There's an in and out there that I stop at when I drive from like LA to Oakland. So I know I'm very familiar with what Lemoore is. Not nearly as sexy as San Diego.
Yeah, but Kelly Slater did build the surf ranch there. So
okay.
If you've seen the videos of the train that goes through the middle of the like cow pasture with kind of a wedge on it to create just a man-made perfect wave. And so they have surf competitions in Lemoore now.
That's wild. I've seen those videos, but I didn't know that's where it was.
Yeah. That's the only thing that in the airbase.
So how many people are out there?
It's a good question.
It's a big base, right?
Yeah. So I don't know how much of this this is public knowledge. Is that like
it's huge?
The whole West Coast fighter squadrons are all for the Navy in Lemoore.
So then you live there full time, your family's there, and then when you get deployed, you just like fly your plane onto a battle group somewhere.
Yep, you fly your jet onto the carrier, and the carrier floats over to the Middle East or to China or
what is that like
to be.
Landing on a postage stamp in the middle of the ocean? Because I've watched some videos where I'm like, when that plane's coming in for, was that descent or what do you call it? Landing. Yeah. So when that plane's coming in for landing, like until you get pretty close, that aircraft carrier, which is the biggest thing in the ocean, looks like a postage stamp way out there. Yeah. Like what is that feeling the first couple times that happens?
It's funny. You don't know it at the time. You're asking specifically about the first couple times?
Yeah. Like the first couple times you land on an aircraft carrier, are you just...
Yeah, it's sheer terror. But you don't know it. Like you lie to yourself. You say... Right. You just are like, yeah, it's just another day. I'm prepared for this. I'm ready.
Done this in a simulator 100 times.
Yeah, and again, it's a bunch of it's the most type of type A people, right? I'm sure you had this in the infantry platoon, but fighter pilots like to compete with each other.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you're getting graded against your buddies and your buddies are there for the first time also, it's like, fuck this guy. I'm going to do better. I'm going to do better than all my buddies. And then you realize when you sit in the squadron after you've done your first couple landings and you're like, kind of have the jitters and you're kind of shaking. You're like, oh, maybe I was a little bit nervous at that. But it becomes a little bit more commonplace. And I will tell you, launching off the end of an aircraft carrier or landing on the back of the boat during the day, we joke it's the most fun that you can have with your clothes on.
Yeah, because it's called a catapult, right? The thing in the middle of the ship that like launches you and help you get forward momentum.
That's right.
What do you go from like 0 to 200 miles an hour in like a second or some shit?
Yeah, it's like 2.5 seconds.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's the craziest roller coaster that you'd ever be on. But I did put a qualifier on there that it's the most fun during the day, right?
Okay.
At nighttime, no matter how many times you do it, it's always terrifying. Whoever decided that we should do it at night is a fucking asshole. but it's a huge advantage tactically for us.
Right.
No other Navy in the entire world lands on the boat at night. And so if we're out in somewhere that's contested, we're the only people that can fly at nighttime.
So why is it so much more harrowing at night? It it seems like, oh, the ship's the plane's the plane. Yeah, okay, great. It's dark and there's lights and stuff. But like, why is it so much more terrifying?
Well, for every possible reason, all of the reasons that you just said. But okay, so at nighttime, you can't tell the difference between the water and the sky on a dark night, right? It's just everything is black.
Sounds painful.
Right? And when you talk about a postage stamp during the day, it's a postage stamp, but like you can kind of tell what it is and you can tell where the horizon is and that postage stamp's a lot bigger. When it's night, it's just literally a little tiny dot that's somewhere in the middle of the ocean. And that's if you're lucky and it's a clear night.
Don't you have like Tesla autopilot by this point in time? Like, doesn't this thing just take care of itself, or does the pilot still have to like do manual shit?
So the pilot still has to do manual shit.
Yeah, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
And then I can imagine going 0 to 200, like that throws you into the back of your seat. But like going 200 to 0 in 2 seconds.
I mean, that's even less because you have a longer space to take off than you have to land.
Okay, so you're going from like 200 to 0 in like a second. How do you not just puke all over the inside of your cab?
Yeah, I guess just lots of practice.
That sounds horrible. I mean, I just think
no, it's really fun. It actually is really fun.
The stopping part sounds horrible. Like I've been thrown pretty hard over my body onto a mat, like in jiu-jitsu or wrestling or something.
Yeah.
And like the of like hitting something hard. I gotta imagine it's the same thing of just being like thrown into your
forward
seat.
into. I mean, you've got the harness on, right? And so you've got you're pretty secure into that ejection seat. But yeah. You do get thrown forward.
Most importantly, do you have to be like under 5'6" to be a fighter pilot?
No, you do
fit
not.
in the plane?
You do not. I've got buddies that are 6'4" that still had the ability to fly jets.
All right, man. So you're living your dream, and obviously you alluded to the fact that like you had this role model in your life, your grandfather, who did very well financially, and that's part of the life goal. What happens? And you're like, all right, cool. I've had enough of this. I've done my 10 years of active duty. I'm flying planes. It seems like such a weird juxtaposition to me of knowing like, this is my childhood life dream. This is the thing I'm going to do. I'm halfway to retirement and a pension, but I'm good. I'm going to get out. Like that to me takes like a level of like maturity or craziness, or I don't know. You can interject any word you want.
Maybe both.
Yeah, maybe both. Two things can be true at the same time, right?
Right.
So what does that look like? Was it a conversation with the wife? Did the wife tell you to get out? Did you say, hey, this is the date I need to get out and start growing like the financial fortune? Or how did you have that in your mind? It doesn't even make sense to me.
Yeah. So the fighter pilot community is very tight knit. And so you see what the guys ahead of you do or the girls ahead of you do. And there's actually become a fairly well-trodden path if you want to get out of the Navy. And there's kind of two different things that people do. One is people go to the airlines, which is really a great quality of life and it's great financially. And two is like top tier business schools have decided that they really like fighter pilots. They like fighter pilots and they like SEALs. And so I'd seen a bunch of friends go ahead of me and they went to top tier business schools. And it's a good transition point where you can go. You can learn a little bit about how to transition from the Navy into, the upper echelons of the business world. And, the GI Bill is there. Yellow ribbon funds are there. And so it actually wasn't super hard. I decided I wanted to go to business school. I studied for the GMAT, took the test, applied to a couple of business schools, got into one that I was excited about going to. And
where'd you go to grad school?
I went to Harvard.
Oh. Fuck. Yeah. Check you out. Overachiever, man.
Yeah. It's always hard to answer that, right? Because
why?
You can't say that I went to Harvard without there's a reaction. No matter it's positive, negative, there's all sorts of shit tied up with that. But I'm proud to, at least until recently, to be associated with Harvard, and I had a good time there.
Yeah, I do shit on. I use Stanford as my fill-in. I guess I could use Harvard.
Yeah.
I do shit on business schools frequently when I'm giving like coaching calls or on podcasts because I hate the fact that like Stanford, especially because they're, more or less in Silicon Valley. It's like Stanford Business School picks the richest, the smartest, the more well-educated, well-connected human beings on the planet of the earth. They take them through business school, and then those people go on to do amazing things. And Stanford's like, look at how good the business school is. It's like, no, that person was rich and connected and brilliant. They were going to succeed with or without business school. Like, you probably gave them a path. You know, they probably made some connections that helped accelerate their business career. But let's not pretend you took some schlep off the street, put them through Stanford Business School, and now they started Google. Like, that's not how it works. So I have a soft spot in my heart for people that go back to school later in life, because I think that's really admirable. And like, I have never found the time to go back to school. And then I also like to shit on business schools. It's like, you're like a sorting mechanism for people that were already going to be successful like yourself.
Well, but it is super helpful to put them all in the same room. Right. And so the most successful thing about my time at Harvard is that I hosted a whiskey night. Right. And so it was great. We lived on campus. We had a 2-bedroom apartment. So I've been in the Navy. I've been a fighter pilot for 10 years. I've got a wife who actually got pregnant for the second time while we're in school. But we've got this 2-bedroom apartment, and she would put our 2-year-old at the time to sleep upstairs. And then I would have 10 guys from the section over, and we would drink whiskey until 2 a.m. And I learned as much in those whiskey nights as I did in the classroom. And by the way, I did learn a lot in the classroom, but I think that you're right. And by the way, I like to shit on Stanford because they didn't let me in either.
Perfect. So we can both shit on Stanford. But it is true. Like, we run our loan officer coaching events different. The one that you attended was kind of a hybrid because I had to do it for a corporate office. But like, the events that I host just for our coaching event, there is no keynote speakers. There's nobody getting on stage with a slide deck, because what I have found is when people come out of those conferences, they can't remember who was up on stage, but they're like, I was at the bar and I got this idea from another great producer who's doing this thing that I'm going to implement into my business. And I'm like, well, why don't we just bring the bar atmosphere into the event? Yeah. And at those events, I tend to be more of a facilitator than a coach. And so it makes sense to me that like the cohort of people you're going through your 2 years at Stanford with would be the ones who like you're learning from. Like, the professors are great. They probably have some good knowledge, but it's like, I want to meet the other guy who's working at, Jay-Z's music label. And I want to meet the other guy that's got 10 years in investment banking experience, et cetera, et cetera. So am I hitting the nail on the head, right? That like you're learning from these other people that are in your cohort because they're more experienced?
So what I will say is that Harvard does a really good job of bringing that into the classroom. So the way that they teach, at least at the business school, is all through the case method.
Oh, nice.
And so what you do is you read a business case, which is basically a business problem in the background, and you have about half the information, which is what happens in real life, right? It's like when you're making a decision about your business, about this podcast, about your coaching, about Synergy One, it's just impossible to have all of the information that you need to make the right decision, right? So you have to do the best that you can with a limited time and limited information. Right? That's the whole point about life, right? Is making time critical decisions with incomplete information. And that's actually what I think translates really well from the Navy. But so what HBS does is they put you in this room with 90 people, and it's all discussion and it's all learning from the other people that are around you. And like you said, that have been doing cool stuff and that are interesting. And so I think they do that really well. I think that the outside of the classroom is really, really good. What I think that business schools and schools in general really struggle with is teaching sales. And I think that culturally, our country doesn't have enough respect for sales as a profession. It is such an important skill that we should be teaching sales in high school instead of chemistry, right? It's like people are actually going to be able to learn how to provide for themselves and for their families if they can learn how to communicate and how to create value and how to empathize with people and how to run a disciplined sales process. There's nothing more important in life than learning how to sell, because whatever profession you have, if you get to the upper echelons of it, you are going to be a salesman. If you are a lawyer, you're going to make partner and you're going to have to sell. If across everything that we do, to sell it's a very human thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Talking about business school where you do the case study stuff and you have half the information and then you got to fill in the blanks and make educated guesses. Was that a hard transition from coming out of like flying a jet where everything's a checklist? Like, there's no improvising when you're taking off on a plane, right? It's like, here's the checklist. Here's what we do. Here's the buttons you hit. Here's the on target. Here's the mission. Here's the goal. It's like, obviously everything goes to shit the first time there's like interaction with an enemy force. But for the most part, all the stuff you're doing in the Navy, from the academy up to like taking off of an aircraft carrier, it's all scripted, right? It's like you have 100% of the information.
Well, so that's where I would actually push back, right? Is it's scripted to an extent. In a jet, you think of this as the administrative phase of flight, which is takeoff, transit to the fight, transit back from the fight, landing. That's all administrative. The tactical portion of the fight is really where you are fighting other jets or you're deploying air-to-surface weapons. And all of that is very much making time-critical decisions with incomplete information because you have to react to what the adversary is doing.
That makes sense. So you don't just like fly up there, push a button, and then come home.
Yeah.
There's like some thinking involved.
That's right. Well, and by the way, it makes sense that I had no idea about it until I was deep in it and had been doing it for 10 years. But like, think about you're trying to make your way into somebody else's airspace. They're going to try to defend that. And you have to think about, hey, where are the jets that are trying to defend their airspace? Where are the surface to air threats? And you don't have perfect information about any of that when you launch.
Right.
And oftentimes you don't have perfect information when you're flying.
Yeah. In the movies, they always know where the air defense is, and they always know when the missiles are coming at them, and they always make the right turn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that makes sense that in real life, you wouldn't have 100% of that information. That's interesting. We're kind of jumping all over the place, but I want to...
Sorry about that.
No. I love it. This is the whole point of having a real, honest conversation. That's why I don't have scripted questions. I've got a podcast tomorrow with a buddy of mine who I do jiu-jitsu with, and I'm not sure how much I'm going to share because I don't know what he would want to share, but he has a special forces background, and now he runs a private security company. And he's like, hey, man, I need all the questions, the scripted. I'm like, no, bro, we're just going to smoke a cigar and have a conversation. Yeah. Whatever comes out, comes out. He's like, oh, that's so much easier.
Yeah.
Anyway, knowing what you know and having done what you have done, is there a point in our future where there will not be humans like you in a plane? Will it all be drones, whether that's automated or controlled from, a cargo ship container at Fort Irwin or wherever all these drone operators are? Like, do you see a future where there's not fighter pilots anymore and it's all electronic, remote, automated?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard as an old fighter pilot to say yes, but it seems like that has to be the case.
Yeah.
Right? Is right now one of the limiting factors of the performance of the jet is the man in the box. Right?
Yeah.
Is the physiological limits of human capacity.
Passing out.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. For me, when you're dealing with these moral questions of employing weaponry on live human beings, like it does seem like you want a human being close in that loop, but we've been flying Predators with somebody remotely for quite some time. So
yeah,
I'm going to continue advocating for, having fighter pilots because I'd love my boys to be able to land on an aircraft carrier, but we're probably a dying breed.
Yeah. It's funny. I was at Jocko Willink jiu-jitsu camp last year, and just because of who he is and the kind of older guys that get into jiu-jitsu, the group of people that can afford to go to his camp tend to be ex-military. They've had some success out of the military. And I was just sitting there smoking a cigar. Cigars are like the great conversation starter, in my opinion. I'm having a conversation with a guy, and he's like, yeah, got out of I can't remember, it was the Air Force or something about 5 years ago and just couldn't handle it anymore. And I was like, oh, what was like the defining reason why you got out? I'm always interested in why people got out. He's like, oh, well, I was serving somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. We'll just leave it at that. And we were employing these surveillance drones, like the most cutting edge, just came out surveillance drones. But when they refitted them and stuff, they needed a different type of like operator because of the weight of the plane and all this shit that has changed with all this stuff. Sure. And they're like, oh yeah, cool. We're going to send you 5 drone operators from New York. He's like, well, wait, what? Why do these New York Air Force National Guard guys already know how to fly these surveillance drones? They're like, oh, we've been flying them over the United States for about 10 years. He's like, so what you're admitting to me is like we've had these super high-tech surveillance drones spying on our own citizens for like the last decade, and these pilots already know how to fly that. They're like, yeah, that's right. He's like, yeah, fuck this. I'm out of the military. He's like, he couldn't handle it anymore. Like it just rocked his brain. So, all right. Anyway, so you go to business school at Harvard. Do we have to, is it required to say it that way? Do they make you say it that way?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Otherwise they kick you out.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you went to
That's actually the only thing they kick you out, where you can do all sorts of bullshit anti-American stuff.
Yeah. I heard you can support terrorists now. And they'll still let you stay there.
But you can't say
yes, at Harvard. So you graduate from Harvard and then
I didn't graduate. So
did it?
No, so I started the company when basically HBS is a 2-year program.
Okay.
I started the company in the first year, and have you heard of a program called Y Combinator?
Yeah.
So I applied to Y Combinator for the summer 19 batch, which would have been the batch between my first and second years at Harvard. I got in, and was able to raise a seed round of venture capital. And so I actually ended up dropping out of HBS.
So explain to people that don't know what this is that you went through to get the seed money. Explain to them what that is.
Yeah, so Y Combinator it's called a startup accelerator. It's the preeminent, most famous, most exclusive accelerator out there. And what they do is they look for entrepreneurs and for business ideas, and they invest usually the first check for a small piece of ownership of the business. YC, which is the short term for Y Combinator, they bring you out to Silicon Valley for 3 months. You meet on a weekly basis. They teach you how to start a business. And at the end of the summer, they put you on stage in front of 1,000 venture capitalists. And have you ever seen the show Silicon Valley on HBO?
Yeah.
So I used to think that show was a comedy, which I think most people do.
Yeah.
Once I got into YC and once I got into raising venture capital and into Silicon Valley, I realized it's a documentary. It's not really a comedy. It's like spot on. And so there is a scene in there where those guys are up on stage with this massive screen behind them. And that is basically what happens at the end of Y Combinator. So at the end of the summer, I get on stage in front of 1,000 venture capitalists.
And these are all people with deep pocketbooks that want to like invest in the next and find the next Facebook or whatever.
That's right. They are institutional venture capitalists. Okay. So it's not that they have, there are some what are called angel investors.
Yeah.
Those are people that are investing their own money. But by and large, it's institutional investors. It's people that have gone out and raised money from pension funds, from insurance companies, from whoever it happens to be. And their job is to go find early stage companies to support and to back.
And do you have any optics on like what the success failure rate is, right? Because for every Peter Thiel who like just kept picking winner after winner after winner, there's some company out there that lost $1 million check after $1 million check after a $5 million check after a $10 million check because none of those businesses made it. So do they have stats on like startups that make it?
Yeah. So, I think that it's somewhere around 93 to 95% go to zero, right? It's like, and so the thing about Peter Thiel and YC even is most of their checks are multi-million-dollar checks that end up returning nothing.
Zero. Just company fails, they go to zero. Pets.com or whatever.
That's right. But by the way, Pets.com wasn't wrong. Chewy is Pets.com 10 years later, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company.
Right.
There's no difference between being wrong and being early.
Right.
But the point is sophisticated venture capital investors, they know that 90% of it's more like 70% of it goes to zero, 20% of it just returns the money. And then the rest of the portfolio has to return 10 to 100x for you to get your return.
Right.
So what they're looking for is a company that can take that, early stage valuation and can grow to be worth 100 times that.
Interesting. And is it public knowledge how much was invested in your idea, UpEquity, and what that percentage was, or is that private information?
I think that most of it's public. We've raised about $40 million of equity and a couple $100 million of debt.
Okay, cool. So tell us, for those of you that stuck around for the first 45 minutes, thank you for indulging me on my desire to learn more about the military. Tell us what UpEquity is and what problem they're solving.
So what we do is, first of all, let me start with our mission. Our mission is to simplify home buying and selling. Bar none, that's what we're trying to do.
I would like for that to happen.
It makes no sense. Like, it's the most important decision that most Americans will ever make, right? It's an emotional decision. It's the most important financial decision. Besides who you marry and decide who to have kids with, the decision to buy a house is likely the most important decision that you're going to make.
Yeah, I can tell you from interviewing thousands of clients over my career, for a lot of people, more thought goes into the house than who they marry. So that's proven by how many people make money on real estate versus how many divorces are in this country. Anyway, I digress. So mission of UpEquity is to make the home buying process simpler.
Right. Just home buying and selling, right? Because most people are only going to live in their house for 7 years, 5 to 7 years, right? And it doesn't make any sense have you heard the statistic that buying a house is such a stressful experience that it leaves 1 in 2 home buyers in tears?
Yeah. 100%.
That's a tragedy, right? Homeownership is important not only to the individual, it's important to our communities and to our society as a whole.
Yep.
The communities that have higher degrees of homeownership, they have lower incidences of crime. They have higher community involvement. The children have better outcomes, and so it's something that I'm truly very passionate about, right? And so what we actually do is we help people that are buying and selling at the same time. which you'll know something about this, but we let our clients buy their next house without a contingency before they've sold their current house. So the other way to think about that is just we help you buy your next house before you have sold your current one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true, man. Like when I get disgruntled about the day-to-day inner workings of my job, sometimes I do have to take a step back and be like, man, the number of people who we have helped create generational wealth and or change the trajectory of their life or their family's life, it really means something. Because like, this is just true. And we could argue about the social economics of it and the politics of it, but the facts on the ground are the facts on the ground. If you go to an area that's mostly rentals versus an area that's mostly homeowners, there is going to be a difference in the quality of life, the safety, the educational system, like everything just
There's
gets
a
better.
difference in how much pride people have in that community.
Right. The tax base is higher because
schools are better.
Everything is just better when you have more homeowners than renters, and it's like you can't even argue that stat. We can argue some of the underlying reasons why people are stuck in rentals, and that would be an interesting discussion at some point with somebody that knows a lot more than me. But like, yeah, what you guys are doing, helping people transition from one house to another. So talk a little bit about how that materializes into like the products you offer.
Okay, so what we realized is that most people cannot qualify for a mortgage on their next house until they've sold their current one, right? And what that leads to is it leads to them making contingent offers. I'm sure that you're familiar with contingent offers.
Yep.
And most people listening to the podcast may or may not be.
Yeah, most of our audience is going to be realtors, loan officers. They know contingent offer is like you're going to go tell the seller of your new house, hey, I really want to buy your house. Oh, but by the way, you have to wait on me to sell my current house. And like in rapidly appreciating markets, and most markets have low inventory, Austin, anywhere in Florida, anywhere in California. It's like most sellers aren't going to accept that. They're like, no, there's no way, Tim. I'm not waiting around for you to screw around with selling your other house before you buy mine. I want somebody that's like ready to buy mine right now with no contingent on what the buyer of your house is going to do. Because then you create this daisy chain of transactions where it only takes one to get screwed up and the whole thing gets spoiled. And
there's two really important things about that is, number one, that uncertainty. The seller is going to demand that you pay more to overcome that uncertainty. It is always worse to have a contingency than it is to not have a contingency.
Right.
And so if you are making a contingent offer, you have to compensate the seller for that uncertainty with something else, which is usually a higher purchase price.
Right.
And the other thing is that the demand for that is a very rational thing, because having your listing go under contract and then fall apart, that is not a net neutral thing, right? What happens if on the MLS your home goes pending and then comes back onto the market? Is everybody on the marketplace understands that this fell out, and they say, what is wrong with this house? Is there
100%?
Is there a problem with the foundation? Is there a problem with, like, what am I missing?
Yeah.
Right. So as a seller, you lose negotiating leverage if that deal falls apart.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm dealing with this right now. I'll give you a real life experience. Client seller flipped this house, did a beautiful job. It's gorgeous, like absolutely gorgeous. They probably bought it for, I don't know, $7 million. They're trying to sell it at $1,250,000. This is in a like really up and coming area of LA that's been massively gentrified in the last, call it, decade. And so they go under contract at $1,250,000. The new buyer discovers, hey, the house looks beautiful. And the brickwork, the 100-year-old brickwork underneath the house is completely disintegrated. We want $150,000 credit. So it's going to bring the price down from like $1,250,000 to $1,100,000. We want $150,000 credit to fix the foundation. The seller balks. He says no. They go back on the market. Well, guess what? Now everybody knows there's a problem. So every realtor calling on that is like, what's the problem? Why did it fall out of contract? Now, luckily, the seller and the listing agent are very ethical because they're supposed to disclose this, and they are. And they tell the next series of buyers, hey, no, the foundation is crumbling. So it sits on the market for like 3 months. And then my buyers who are currently under contract got it at like $1,100,000, and they're still asking for a $60,000 credit to fix the foundation. So it's like once it goes back on the market, the perception is something is massively wrong with the property. And I'd be willing to bet, as a matter of fact, I think I've seen them, is that properties that have to go back on the market end up losing about 4 to 5% of value, regardless of whether there's a problem or not.
100%, right? Because not only do people think that there's a lemon problem or there's a problem with the property, they also know that you're now desperate, right? Because you probably we're moving out of that house.
Yeah, paying the mortgage, carrying costs.
That's right. And so for all of those reasons, contingent offers they're just terrible for people. There's real economic cost and real stress that it causes for people. And actually, what our statistics and what the statistics out there show is that if you can remove a contingency from your offer, you're going to get under contract for 2 to 4% less than you otherwise would have.
Oh, it's real money.
It is real money. Right. And so what we did is we said, hey, why do people have to make these contingent offers? Right. And it comes down to two things. It comes down to the fact that most people can't qualify for the new loan if they still have the old house, right? And that's a DTI issue. Is right. Fannie and Freddie make you qualify for both mortgages at the same time.
You got 2 mortgages, two property taxes, 2 insurance. Like most people aren't making enough money to cover 2 houses.
That's right. Especially when you're trying to, I mean, this is usually the trade up buyer, right? It's like you went from 1 kid to 2 kids, you're early stage in your career, you're moving into the house that you want to grow into, and that's probably all you qualify for. And so, you know, it's kind of crazy. You're not going to qualify for 2 loans. And then the other problem is a cash problem, right? Is it's really hard to make a down payment when all of your wealth is tied up in the equity of your old home. The vast majority of Americans' wealth is tied up in the equity of their homes. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get more people access to that wealth creation of owning the right home. And we're trying to get more people access to that so that they can put it to work.
Yeah. I'll give a real life example of that I ran through. And by the way, whoever created your little auto qualifier website, it's really slick. Like, so kudos to whatever tech team you have that built that out, because it works. It's fast. It's very like self-explanatory. I've seen some really bad operating systems from mortgage companies, and yours is very, very good. So kudos to that.
Well, I mean, I got on stage and I said, literally one of your guys' LOs thought that he did it wrong because it was too simple.
Yeah.
Because it only took, 30 seconds, 90 seconds, whatever it is.
Right.
It's very easy.
And so I was talking to this client and we got this answer in 10 minutes. It ended up not working out because the client's family came out of the woodwork with some money to support them. But the scenario was client bought in one of these Redfin's most fastest appreciating areas, Eagle Rock, California. They bought like 10 years ago. Frankly, the only good financial decision they've ever made is they bought this house. So they owed about $380,000 on a house that they bought for $500,000 a decade ago. The house is now worth $1 million. But when we looked at their finances, they're like, hey, for us to sell this place and get $1.1 million, we probably need about $30,000 or $40,000 of deferred maintenance. We've got about $70,000 of credit cards that we need to pay off so that we're financially comfortable moving jobs. And then we're done with LA. We're moving back to where our family is in Pennsylvania. We need $100,000 down on the new house. So their dilemma was, hey, we have no cash. We don't want to do a refinance because we're only going to be in this house for 60, 90 more days. Yep. We need about $250,000 in cash to like tidy up the property, have some living money, make the down payment on the new house.
Well, and by the way, if they had done a refinance, they wouldn't have qualified for the new loan.
Yeah, they wouldn't qualify for the new loan. And when they pay off that house in 90 days, I get my commission taken back anyway. So it's like, I don't want to work on that deal. Right. Because for those that don't know that are listening, if a loan gets paid off in the first 6 months and they've collected no interest, the lender takes the commission back from the loan officer. And so like all things, like all roads led to Rome, right? Is that the saying? I think so. And it just made sense for them to do a product like yours where it's like, hey, you pay a couple % fee, but we'll give you this $250,000 upfront so you can pay off your debt, get to net zero, have the renovation funds, go put the $100,000 down on the new $500,000 house you're buying in Pennsylvania. And then what you guys do, correct me if I'm wrong, is you basically sign a contract that says, okay, you can work with your agent, you can do whatever you want, sell the property for whatever you want. But if you don't sell it, we're going to buy it from you for, I think it was like $925 or something like that. So can you walk through kind of like structurally how it works?
Yeah. So the most important thing about our guaranteed offer on their house is that they're guaranteed to get the full market value of the home and that they are going to be able to sell their house for more than they would have otherwise had they not worked with us, right? That's the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
There's 2 things that I think I'm very passionate about on this topic. And number 1 is that we create more value than we charge, right? I don't want to do a business where, there are good businesses out there because convenience is worth something that charge a fee for convenience. We call our fee a convenience fee, but because there's nothing else simple to call it, right? But the reason that we're growing so fast, and the reason that actually our partnership with Synergy One is crushing it from the time that I went on stage, like, you guys have been great. But the reason for that is that our mutual clients end up with more money in their pocket at the end of the transaction working with us than they would have if they did not work with us.
Explain why that happens.
So the number one is the one that we were just talking about, is that they're going to be able to buy their next house for less. It's super simple. We give you more negotiating leverage, so you're going to buy your next house for less, and you're going to sell your current one for more. And that's the whole point and purpose of what we're doing.
Yeah.
It is a benefit that you get to time the transactions, you get to know when to schedule the movers, you get to move stress-free on your timeline. But the real thing that gets me motivated, that got me to drop out of Harvard, is the fact that you get to buy your next house for less and sell your current one for more.
Yeah.
And you're going to end up with more money in your pocket at the end of the day, as opposed to not working with us. That's how I think you can make a business 100%. That really scales.
And some people, I always think about, like, where might the audience be rolling their eyes? And they're like, oh, well, that's just Tim's sales pitch. Da-da. No, like, I've been doing this for 25 years, intimately involved with our realtor, like, strategy and the client strategy. It is true when you don't feel like you're under the gun, where you're like, I was going to say under the 8 ball. It would be behind the 8 ball or under the gun. When you don't feel like, oh, I've got 30 days to sell this house. I've got to take whatever offer comes in with whatever terms comes in. You know, when you have time to be like, okay, Tim's company, UpEquity, has given me the breathing room to be able to move out of my current house, buy the new house, stage the old house, get my clutter out of there, right, market it appropriately, have several weeks of open houses instead of just one open house and we got to take whatever offer, because, I don't know, maybe the highest offer was a family that was out of town the weekend you had your open house, right? Like, I know this to be true in my heart of hearts, that when you have flexibility and you're not under the gun or behind the 8 ball, you're just going to make more money on the sale. And then if you don't have the contingent offer, I know you're going to get a better deal on the house you're buying. This is just the science of mortgage and real estate.
Well, and what's your other option? Your other option is that you sell your house and you move in with your in-laws, or you move into an Airbnb and you have 2 moving costs and you rent for 6 months. And by the way, historically, home prices appreciate. So if you have to buy the same house next year, it's even worse than making a contingent offer.
Totally. And then the other thing that maybe some lenders, not me, of course, but some other lenders have come up with is like, well, hey, on your departing residence, we're going to do a second mortgage. And then we got to have your friend Steve sign a rental agreement that says if you do got caught with your pants down with owning both of these houses at the same time, Steve would rent the house for $4,000 a month. But we really know you're going to try to sell it, but we've got to have this paperwork for the underwriter. And now the client's like, well, that all makes sense, but are you basically like inciting me into mortgage fraud? Yeah. And it's like, well, no, it's not fraud. I'm just saying, like, do we have Steve who could potentially rent the place out? And it's like, it's really playing in this shitty gray area.
Well, I mean, that is fraud.
Yeah. Well, you know, fraude, like, it's French, right? And what you guys do is, like, for a 2 or 3% convenience fee on the money that they're borrowing or the value of the departing residence, you're just creating a much smoother transaction. And I said this out loud on a podcast, and like the realtor partners that I work with will know how much I value them. But when I look at some of the shitty real estate agents out there, you guys are creating way more value for that 2 or 3% than maybe like a underqualified buyer's agent would create for their 2% that they're costing. So it makes sense to me, especially with this most recent proposed NAR settlement that's coming out. It's like you guys are filling a void that, one, really needs to be filled. And 2, like you said, we won't name any of these other companies by name, but there are some companies out there that come in and say, okay, to my clients, for example, hey, use the name Nicole. Hey, Nicole, we know you're in a tough spot financially. We're going to buy the house from you for $900,000 because we know all day we can sell it in 30 days for $1 million. You don't capture that $100,000 of upside, but we're making it convenient for you. You just lose 10% of your property value. You guys are allowing the seller to work with their agent and go out to the marketplace and get full market value, and you don't take any of that money, correct?
That's correct. So there are, again, 2 things that you said there that I think are really important. Number one is that we partner with agents and we partner with lenders. We're not trying to cut lenders or agents out. I do agree with you that there's a wide disparity or dispersion in the talent level of buyer's agents.
Right.
But a good buyer's agent is worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, agree.
And a good seller's agent is also worth their weight in gold. The problem is that the barrier to entry is too low. And so you have some agents that give everybody else a bad name.
100%.
We, at our core, are trying to partner with lenders and agents, though, because we all have the same mission. We all have the same mission of creating access to the American dream, right? Of simplifying home buying and selling and letting people actually build stronger communities, right? And then the second part is we talked about the fact that most Americans, most of their wealth is tied up in that house. I think it is egregious. I mean, on one hand, I think that consenting adults should be able to do whatever they want. They should be able to
sign whatever shitty contract you want to.
Contract you want, right? But that's not how I want to do business, right? I think that for most Americans, if the vast majority of your net wealth is tied up in your home, we should do everything we can to maximize that value and get all of that value to you, as opposed to being a rent seeker and trying to capture something by giving you a low ball offer and flipping that property.
That's awesome. I'm going to ask you this quasi-political question because you have a military background, you went to Harvard, and what you just said really rings true with me. One of the things that I say all the time, doesn't matter if I'm arguing about the war in Israel or taxation policy or whatever, I'm like, hey man, we have to be able to keep in mind that two things can be true at the same time. Like what you just said is kind of beautiful. It's like, hey, consenting adults can go with one of our competitors and sign some shitty contract where right off the top, they lose 10 or 20% of the equity in their house, but it's convenient. So that's true, or I believe that to be true. And you also said, like, I just want to build a company that does it better. Why are there so many Americans that like can't hold those two thoughts in their mind at the same time, where I think 50% of Americans might say, we got to completely regulate this industry. That other company that takes 10% can't exist because that's predatory financial, like, destruction of equity of people's houses. And then another 50% might be like, well, there should be no regulation. It just has to be the Wild West and you can be as unethical as you want to try to steal people's equity. Like, why can't people in America hold two thoughts in their mind at the same time and be like, hey, these two things can be true. This company can exist that has, in our opinion, an inferior contract to what you're doing. Oh, and by the way, you're filling the market void of like coming up with a better version of that company. Like, why can't Americans think logically about this stuff?
That's fine. Like, not to go too again, maybe we need to bring out the whiskey. Probably not a good enough public education system here.
Yeah.
I actually think the root cause of evil in the American political system is gerrymandering. And it's because you get these congressional districts that are solidly blue or solidly red. And so and again, people on the podcast probably don't give a shit what I think about the root political evil. But the problem is that we've become so tribalized because these congressmen don't have to worry about a challenger from the middle of the road, right? They have to worry about somebody on the fringes of their own party. And so it pushes everybody further and further into crazy land, right? Like, we're building our company in Austin, Texas, and I'm raising my family in Austin, Texas. And what I often say is, like, Austin's a great place to build a family and build a company because there's enough crazy people on both sides of the spectrum that you come to some reasonable compromise of how to run a society.
Yeah, it's so funny. I've said this frequently. Las Vegas, where we're sitting, Austin, Texas, there's a couple other examples. It's basically a blue dot in a red state. And to me, that's the perfect juxtaposition of like, I want culture. I want my kids to be, exposed to all different kinds of people from different walks of life. And when it comes to like how I'm taxed and how my business runs, I want a really red state who's like less regulation, lower taxes. To me, that's kind of how the amazing parts of America were created, right? It's like, I'm a communist at my dinner table, like from each of our abilities to each of our means. Like, clearly I feed my kids without them having to work for it. So like at my kitchen table, I'm a communist. In my community, I'm probably pretty liberal. And then macroeconomics, I'm about as conservative as it gets. And I don't know why there's not more politicians telling that story. It feels like we get a lot more center of the road people who could hold two thoughts in their mind at the same time. If, like, to your point, they weren't running to the two fringes, which seems wackadoodle to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that by policy at UpEquity, we took the stance of, if you've heard of Brian Armstrong and Coinbase, we are not going to make political statements. Our mission is to simplify home buying and selling.
Yeah.
We think that is a incredibly important mission, and we only comment and do things that are in furtherance of that mission.
I love that.
And like, politics has no place in the workplace.
Yeah.
I tell stories on the first day of, listen, when I was in the Navy, There were people far to the left of me, far to the right of me, and we were very close, very good friends, and we worked together because why? We had a shared mission and we had shared core values. And I think that one of the things that we've lost in this country, and hopefully it's coming back, is that shared sense of community, those shared values, that the shared pride in the fact that this really is the greatest nation that has ever existed on the face of the planet. And the way that I know that is that if I asked you and I said, Scott, you don't know, you're going to be reincarnated and you don't know what race or religion or color or sexual preference or whatever that you're going to be reincarnated, choose a time and a place and a country to live, you're probably going to choose America around the turn of the last century.
Yeah, I'm going to go 1992. Yeah, no, that's such a good point. And for people that don't know what you're talking about, can you touch on, because I'm sure you've read the letter, the CEO of Coinbase and what he sent out and what he said? Because I think he's a model for how companies should be handling this issue of like, dude, how did our Slack board turn into like political advocacy? So can you talk a little about what that Coinbase came out and made a stand about?
Yeah, so it was really controversial 4 or 5 years ago because this is kind of the height of the social justice movements. And Brian Armstrong just came out and said, guys, like you can have all of these opinions, and that's fine to do on your own time. That's not what this company is for. That's not what we're going to focus on here. We're going to focus on our mission. And that's it, right? And I think that that's the right way to run a business.
Yeah, feels like that should not be controversial at all. It's like, hey, when you're at work, we're working on building Coinbase into the greatest crypto median exchange in the world. And that doesn't seem like that should be controversial.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I don't think should be controversial all of a sudden is. It's like, we're a merit-based company. What I care about, and it actually goes back to the question that you asked me at the beginning, right, is how many people were involved in safely launching me off the front end of the aircraft carrier. And it's thousands of people, right? I had to rely on everyone who turned a wrench. I had to rely on everybody who drove the ship. I had to rely on the guys on the deck, the girls on the deck, whatever it is. I could go on, right? And when my life was on the line, there are things that I cared about. And there's things that I did not care about. And I'll tell you what I did care about was the content of your character, your professional competence, and your work ethic. What I did not care about is your race, your religion, your sexual orientation, anything else. All I care about is how good of a person are you, how good are you at your job, and how hardworking are you.
Yeah. Again, shouldn't really feel like a controversial statement.
Yeah.
Bonkers.
We live in crazy times.
All right. So give us some eye-popping numbers about like, how long ago did UpEquity start? Like you mentioned, $40 million in seed money investor venture capital, and then a couple $100 million in debt because you have a very debt intensive business. Is there anything public or things that you would be comfortable sharing as far as like, how many homeowners you've helped or how much money you have in float? Like, I just think of like the financial responsibility your company has seems kind of daunting.
Yeah, well, especially in the environment of the last couple of years. We're sitting right here. You can probably see these like gray patches in my beard.
Yeah.
I was so stressed in the last 18 months that my beard started to fall out.
Holy shit.
And so this is like me on the good side is it's coming back gray.
Okay.
And so, we started this from scratch and we didn't have the right product at first. We didn't have the right sales motion at first. Like I said, they don't teach sales at business school.
Right.
And we had to figure that kind of stuff out. The eye-popping thing is the growth rate, right? Is even in this down market, once we figured out this product, our volume tripled last year.
Congrats, man.
And that is accelerating. Our volume is going to more than triple in this upcoming year.
Wow, that's crazy.
And we don't do a lot of the kind of public numbers that you're asking for. But what I can say is that with just one partnership, which is Synergy One, in the first month of the partnership, we closed almost $10 million worth of transactions in the first 30 days.
That's real money.
That's real money. And for the loan officers that partnered with us, those are deals that they would not have closed otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I always say one of the realizations loan officers come to at some point in their career is that, I don't create anything, because we're told this story of like, you're fully commissioned, you're basically self-employed, you're running your business, and yes, there's millions of transactions, but like if there's going to be 4.2 million purchase transactions this year in America, there's 4.2 million purchase transactions that occur. I can't create purchase transactions, right? Maybe you could argue that if realtors are out there door knocking and talking to people about moving up and whatnot, they maybe realtors can create transactions. But let's say there's 4.2 million people that are going to decide to sell a home and $4.2 million or 4.2 million people that are going to decide to buy a home. It's like we don't create anything like Apple, where it's like, all right, well, we've kind of maxed out the iMac. Let's create an iPad, and we've sold everybody we can an iPad. Now we'll sell people earbuds. You know, we don't have that luxury. But what I like about your product is that with a little bit of education, we actually can create transactions, because now all of a sudden we can explain to sellers how they can sell without the headache of these contingent offers. And oh my God, what if I sell and I don't know where I'm going to move? What if I buy a replacement house and I can't sell my house, and now I'm putting myself in financial ruin because I do have 2 mortgages, 2 tax bills, 2 insurance payments? Like maybe this is something you guys haven't even thought about, is like you're one of the few, if only, products in the marketplace that actually allow realtors and loan officers to create transactions out of thin air. Yeah. It's pretty beautiful.
That's right. And to our loan officers, we say, hey, we give you a real reason to call realtors. Right? Right. I mean, we talked about this at the conference that we did together, which is how many loan officers are calling with the same tired thing to the realtor of, hey, you got any deals for me? You want some donuts? Whatever it happens to be.
Did you work or play this weekend? It's like,
right.
Why do they care? I don't even know their kid's name. Why do they want to tell me what they did this weekend?
That's right. And then for realtors, it's like, hey, we can get your clients off the sideline and we can reactivate the clients that got fed up with losing contingent offers.
Right.
But the underlying truth, the most important thing is that it helps the client get into the right situation for their family, right? Imagine you're sitting there. I mean, you have kids. I just met, and I don't know if you want me to say your
Gabriel.
You met Gabriel. Hey, by the way, very respectful. You should be proud. Like, great kid. And I have two small kids that I've talked about. I can't imagine, as you add people to the family, still being stuck in the house that was right for you when you're just a couple or when you're just one kid. Getting people into the right living situation lets them have better outcomes, and it also lets them have better financial outcomes.
Yeah. There's a couple things I'm thinking of. There's 3 school districts in the greater LA area, San Marino, La Cañada, and South Pasadena, where it's like, and there's another one in the Los Feliz area. People are always trying to get into those school districts, right? Because it's like they value, maybe culturally or politically or whatever, they value sending their kids to public school, or they can't afford private school. And it's hard. Like, properties rarely come up in those neighborhoods. That you better have an all non-contingent offer. Definitely no contingent of a sale, but you probably have to waive your appraisal contingency and your loan contingency and everything else. And it's a grinder to close a property in one of those markets. And so there's been times where I've written a pre-approval letter and I'm just like, I might as well wipe my ass with this thing, because they have to sell their house in, whatever, Boyle Heights, to move into South Pasadena because now they got kids, and Boyle Heights was cool and it was trendy and it was the arts district and they could walk past the homeless people to like go to their favorite coffee shop and it didn't bother them. And now that they got little Johnny,
stepping over hypodermic needles is okay when you're single.
Yeah, when you're single, it's cool. Like, downtown LA is fun when you're single. But now all of a sudden you have kids and you're like, okay, I got to get into South Pasadena or La Cañada or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they can't do that if they have a contingent offer, right? So you guys step in, you effectively offer to buy the house from them. They can work with whoever, so they get full value. They get their cash out to go buy the new place. It makes the loan easier for me. And what's funny is that I don't even know what the economics are behind the scenes with you and Synergy, because loan officers don't get paid in our world, don't get paid on this product because it's not there as a money-making opportunity. It's there as a deal-creating opportunity.
Which is a money-making opportunity.
Yeah, of course, because I don't get that mortgage unless they have the ability to do what you do. So this is probably where we have to insert I was not paid for this promotional activity or something like that. But yeah, it's really amazing, the product that you've come up with. What do you envision as like a 5 or 10 year growth plan? Like, obviously the investors who invested with you, one day they want their money back. Yeah. We
want to be in that 10% that returns 100x, right?
Yeah. Like, what does your trajectory look like, or what's on the big vision board for Tim?
So I like building things, right? I like building companies. I like helping people, and I like this space, right? I think that hopefully my passion and like genuine passion for this space has come through.
It has totally come through, and I have no idea why it exists. You've told me nothing about your history that's like, I want to be the guy that changes home ownership.
Well, and so let me wrap that together, right? Is that when I was on active duty, I'm scratching that itch of being competitive. I'm scratching that itch of serving our country. But I have this separate thing, which is that I want to create wealth. And I understand that I'm waiting 10 years to like really have the opportunity to do that with a business. The only opportunity that my wife and I had to create wealth on active duty was investing in real estate. And so as we moved from duty station to duty station, we bought single family homes using the VA loan. And when we would move on, we would turn them into a rental. And so that was actually very helpful in me being able to afford going to business school. That was very helpful in terms of like building a family once we got out of the Navy. And so I saw all of the positive things about home ownership. I saw how it enables the American dream. And like probably most of the people that are listening to this podcast, you get bit with that real estate bug, right? You see what it can do for people.
Yeah, what's so funny is a good friend of mine, Casey Crawford, he's the CEO of Movement Mortgage. You guys have a very similar story about why he got into mortgage. So he was playing in the NFL, won a Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he'd be the first to say that he was like the third string tight end. He was not starting in the Super Bowl, but he was there and he got a Super Bowl ring.
I don't have a Super Bowl ring.
Right, neither do I. So he gets a Super Bowl ring. He gets traded to the Carolina Panthers. And when he got traded, the headache of having a house in Tampa and buying a new house in North Carolina, he's like, wait a minute. He's like, I'm effectively rich. I've got guaranteed income this year of like 3.2 million or 2.2 million or something like that. If it's a pain in the ass for me to buy a house, what's it like for the average homeowner or the average American, right? To become a homeowner. And so that really motivated him to say, all right, there's something here. And I think I'm getting this correct. I would hate if I misspoke. But I think when he first got out of the NFL, he had enough cash. He was doing some hard money loans to basically do what you guys are doing for players that were in transit. And then he hooked up with some great people. They rebranded a company to Movement Mortgage, and the sky's been the limit for them. They should probably be one of your next strategic partners because you guys would be very aligned.
We actually have a fair amount of traction with some high-producing movement LOs.
Awesome.
We don't have the partnership the same way that we do at Synergy One. But the nice thing is that we have grassroots momentum at a lot of places. Movement is one of them.
That's awesome, man. And we'll make sure we get this podcast out to, one, all of our coaching clients, and two, I've got a database of about 10,000 loan officers, so we'll send this out to them so that they know who UpEquity is. By the way, if a loan officer is listening to this and they want to get hooked up with like one of your account managers, do they just go to upequity.com and like fill out an interest sheet, or what do they do?
Yeah, that's the easiest way to get in contact. Is there's a contact us section of the website.
Okay, cool. So knowing that you want to be one of those companies that return 100x to your original investors, what does that roadmap look like? Do you have to be a preferred vendor to like 200 mortgage companies, or do you think this is just a grassroots thing? Or
yeah, I mean, I think that we want to have embedded partnerships with regional and national lenders, right? And then we also want to have those partnerships with realtors, but we're not going to stop with this product. Like, this solves an enduring and real problem. But I'm already thinking about, hey, how do we reintroduce cash offers? And by the way, I'll tease that, is we have figured out how to make cash offers for your clients again. And so that'll be rolling out soon. It's just like, there are so many pieces that are broken. We want to be the innovative financial partner for realtors and lenders, bar none. And, for this product in particular, I think that, half of people that are buying a house have another house to sell. If we really believe what we're doing, which I do, all of them need a product like this. Some of them have family money and don't need to use this product, but most people don't. Most people don't have a rich uncle or a rich family. And so I think that, 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 transactions in America should be using this product.
Yeah. And I think the most recent stats I looked at, it's like 4.2 million houses are going to sell this year. So say maybe 2 million of them are people that are upgrading or downsizing or whatever. They need access to a product like yours. Let's say half of those are independently wealthy, or they're for sale by owner, or they will never understand this concept no matter how many times we explain it to you, or they've got, they've got family money that can help them bridge the gap or whatever. But there's probably somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million transactions out there in the United States per year that need a service like this, that it would make their life so much easier.
That's right.
And
we think that this has to be provided by a partner to the lender. It's a very hard product to wrap into the lender itself.
Right.
I mean, we've spent a lot of time and money on our technology.
Yeah,
and
it's very good.
And the ability to actually, I mean, we can make these offers that we stand behind 90% of the time. Sorry, we stand behind them 100% of the time. I'm saying that 90% of the time we can make those offers instantaneously.
Right. Yeah. I was shocked how quickly it came through. So whatever algorithm you're using to like vet the client, vet the property value, et cetera, it's like you guys have built like a really sexy product.
Yeah, thank you.
Congrats on that. And then have you heard anything about the California Dream for All program?
I have not.
So for the most part, I think down payment assist programs are laughable. I think most of them are just like a complete boondoggle for politicians to get votes. And I think they're universally pretty much garbage. They're hard to transact. They're hard to just everything about them is cumbersome.
Yep.
And then, this is me speaking politically because I know your company doesn't make political statements. Me speaking politically, we don't have a shortage of buyers, right? So for the government, whether that's city, county, state, federal, for the government to keep incentivizing buyers, they're looking at the wrong side of the equation. What we need to incentivize is the supply side. But the problem is there's a lot more voters who want to be buyers than voters who are property developers. But, if California wanted to solve their housing crisis, all of the money that they're putting into buyer incentives and taxes and grants and down payment assistance, all of that should be going to builders to build more units more affordably.
Well, and reducing regulation. Right? Like I actually
Right.
don't think that's a political statement.
Right.
There's only one thing in the world that every economist agrees on. It's that rent control doesn't work and that you need more supply. The fundamental underlying truth of the thesis of why we're building this company is because we have underbuilt housing in America for 20 years.
Yeah.
Ever since 2008, we have not built enough housing. We've underbuilt housing by 5 million units. And that's why even when Jerome Powell is hiking interest rates faster and further than ever before, housing prices went up by 6% in the last 12 months.
Yeah, because there's not enough supply, there's too many buyers, and that just drives prices up.
We only have forced buyers right now. The only people buying houses and moving are people getting divorced, having kids, dying, or moving jobs, or family formation, right?
Right.
You don't have the traditional move up buyer. And even with that, housing prices are going up. That means that we have not built enough housing. That's not a political statement. That's just like hey, gravity exists.
Yeah, for sure. And so something that I do like that the Dream for All program's doing, and I don't know if your investors would accept this time horizon, is basically the California Dream for All program. I can't remember, it's $100,000. I think it's $150,000. $150,000, you put your name in a lottery. If you win the lottery, you got 90 days to basically lock up a property. The state of California will give you a grant for $150,000 for the down payment of your house. But then whenever you sell or refinance, they participate in 50% of the upside. So you buy a $600,000 house, you put $150,000 down, that comes from the state. There is no payment. There's nothing. It's just there as a lien against the house. And in 10 years, when you sell the house for $1 million, they get half of the appreciation. So it's like, and they get their $150,000 back. So for clients that truly have no access to family money, gift funds, but if they put down 3.5%, now they have mortgage insurance on an FHA loan, it basically makes the house unaffordable for them. Well, if they have a real 20% down payment from the state, who cares what upside the state takes in 10 years because they were never going to be in that house to begin with. So that's a program that I'm like, oh, that I'm sure there's some unintended consequences I'm not thinking through because I'm not smart enough, but that feels like a financially viable product that if you have an entity like a state government that has a long 10, 20, 30-year time horizon, they're like, oh, we're going to get our money back. Properties, they tend to go up and down a little bit, but on a 200-year trend line, they only go up. So it's like they know it's a good investment, right? It's a long-term financial product investment for them. And in communities, I'm like, oh, this is something government could do well. And it almost turns my stomach to say that out loud because I'm pretty hardcore libertarian. But launching jets off of aircraft carriers and maybe the California Dream for All program, these are the things the government can do well. So again, I don't know if your investors have that type of time horizon, but it's an interesting look at how we could help people get into a home who don't otherwise have the wherewithal to save for a down payment.
Yeah, so I'm going to be contrarian here because I think that nothing is more boring than watching an interview where people just agree with each other and like.
Yeah, perfect. You can tell me I'm an idiot.
No, I don't think you're an idiot. And I don't know enough about the California Dream program, and maybe it works really well with the government. And so all I can say is I have skepticism of the fractional homeownership models, at least when they are, and I'm not going to name names, but at least when they are provided by venture capital backed companies or the private sector. And the reason that I have skepticism for them is I think that typically they are predatory to the consumer. Now, hopefully the state of California is not being predatory. And so the way that you described it, I would agree. It does sound great, but down payment assistance doesn't seem to be the problem, right? Like you said, there's an FHA option with 3% down. I don't think that down payments are what are stopping Americans from being able to access homeownership. Now, maybe your point around that reduces their monthly payment by reducing the PMI, that is something that I hadn't considered and I think is a high quality argument. But typically, I think that people would be better off accepting the PMI and owning 100% of the upside.
Yeah.
Because I bet the state of California doesn't subsidize the downside if the house sells for less.
Right. No, I don't think so.
I mean, maybe they take Yeah.
Oh man, what did I forget to ask you about UpEquity? Either what it's been like to build a company or, any of the trials and tribulations. I love the fact that you were forthcoming about the fact that dude, we did not have the product right correctly a few years ago when we launched this. It's been a refinement process. What did I forget to ask you about your journey, about equity specifically, about anything that you're learning through this process?
I think that the only thing that I'd like to talk about, because so many people listening to you and your coaching are in the real estate profession, and I want them to know that they're not the only ones having a hard time, right? Yes, right now, I actually, do feel like we are crushing it. This is our best month ever. Q1 was our best quarter, but the 18 months before that were brutal, like I said. And you actually just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. There is, if I go back to Stanford, which I did not get into, there's a professor named Jim Collins, and he wrote the book
Good to Great,
Built to Last, all these great books. And one of the really important principles that he has is actually off of a Navy fighter pilot. It's called the Stockdale paradox. Are you familiar with Jim Stockdale?
No.
So Jim Stockdale was...
He read the OODA loop thing?
No, I don't remember his first name, but it's Boyd. Okay. He was an Air Force pilot, was the OODA loop. Jim Stockdale was the senior ranking officer at the Hanoi Hilton. And so he was a POW for 7 or 8 years and went through some really terrible things. Wound up as a vice admiral in the Navy and actually a professor at Stanford. And he was in the Hanoi Hilton with John McCain. And they talk about the guys that made it and the guys that didn't make it through. And what was universally true about the guys that made it through that experience was they weren't optimists, they weren't pessimists, they were realists, right? They had the first part is that they brutally confronted the facts of the situation, right? I don't think that it's helpful as a loan officer to keep saying, hey, next month is when rates are coming down, right? It's listen, rates are going to be higher for longer, and we've got to figure out how to exist in this situation. So number one is brutally confront the facts. And number two is to have an unwavering faith in your ability to overcome that situation, right? We have to be honest with ourselves about the situation that we find ourselves in, and we have to be unwavering in our belief in ourselves to figure out a way through. And then we have to put one foot in front of the other, and before you know it, you're going to have compounding wins, and you're going to have a bigger, healthier business, and the people that survive to 2025 or 2026, whenever it happens to be, the sun will shine on mortgage and real estate again.
I love that, man. Normally, I would just drop the mic and have us end the podcast there, but I always have to end with 2 questions because I always ask the same questions. One, and I think this is going to be a pretty easy one for you. What is your favorite movie and why? And then number 2, what are you most looking forward to going into the second half of 2024?
It's a good. I don't want to be so cliche with the.
I mean, you can say Top Gun. It's fine.
No, no, it's good. I'm gonna go with the same theme for both the movies, and I'm gonna go totally off the topic, right? And so, favorite movie is The Sandlot.
Amazing movie. And
what I'm most looking forward to is I told you when we were walking in, my 7-year-old just made the All-Star team, which, by the way, it's crazy. Sports in Texas are crazy. The fact that we have a 7-year-old All-Star team is nuts.
Right.
I'm looking forward to, on the weekends, going out and helping coach that team.
So, funny correlation. Chris, who's my audio guy, his older brother, Robert, is my was my best friend growing up, and our paths diverged in junior high because I continued to go to public school. He went to private school. He went to school all 4 years with Mike Vitar, who was the main character, who's the amazing baseball player who ends up making it to the Dodgers. Yeah. So
Benny the Jet Rodriguez.
I will tell you once we stop the mic a few stories about Mike Vitar. And yeah, man. First of all, thanks for coming all the way out here to be on the podcast. I'm so glad it worked out and we will have you on. We'll make sure we'll get all this information out to as many loan officers as possible about UpEquity, and like, thanks for your service in the military. And then to me, almost more importantly, because there's a lot of guys that want to be fighter pilots, thank you for like how you're changing the housing industry, because there's not a lot of guys that have the vision to change that. So just, man, thanks for what you're doing.
Thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun, and thanks for your service as well.
Cool.